cool decks in our feature match area right now. Let's head on down. Hello and welcome to this round 9 of Grand Prix Madrid. I'm Tim Willoughby, and we're here with Moraine Leibert, and we have Ferran Relat Goberna against Francisco Sanchez. Francisco's team, quite a powerful one with the likes of Antonio Del Moral Leon, former Pro Tour winner, in there. But it's Ferran's deck that we really wanted to showcase for you here because it's a little bit of an unusual one, Moraine.
Yeah, he calls it Steel Stumpy, something honestly I have never seen before in Legacy. And we'll get to see it in action here. He starts off with a turn 1 Chalice of the Void. Definitely a good card against all of these Delver decks with that many 1-drops. His deck, a little bit of a weird one. It's trying, I guess, to lock out his opponent with Chalice of the Void and with Thorn of Amethyst. And then it all plays all sorts of, artifact utility creatures. Arcbound Ravager, Hangerback Walker, Fire Action Revoker, and Walking Ballista. A really weird set of artifact creatures. And the one that ties it all together is Steel Overseer. Steel Overseer, of course, very good with Arcbound Ravager, very good with Hangerback Walker, very good with Walking Ballista. All of these creatures, they care about the +1/+1 counter more than you think. There we see Steel Overseer. Taps, put a +1/+1 counter on each artifact creature you control.
And we may well see that there's actually not very many spells get cast by Francisco Sanchez at any point in this game, because already with that Chalice of the Void in play alongside Thorn of Amethyst, it's going to be very, very difficult for him to resolve any spells. A large proportion of his deck is 1-drops, and it's just a really problematic position that he finds himself in here.
Yeah, and there we have the Hangerback Walker, just as a 1/1 and also an Arcbound Ravager. This is how Ferran's deck is supposed to function. I mean, he just dropped a couple of luck pieces, and now he's playing these weird artifact creatures that have some utility on them. Hangerback Walker, we all know it from Standard back in the days. It was a powerhouse back then, but now making its appearance in Legacy as well. Look at that, it comes into play with X +1/+1 counters, and when it dies, it creates a bunch of topters. Of course, for 1 mana and you tap it, you can put an extra +1/+1 counter on it. Another card that works, of course, very well with Hangerback Walker, we see it right on screen there, Arcbound Ravager. Sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Arcbound Ravager. Of course, with Hangerback Walker, that works wonderful. Well, I think Francisco Sanchez, he's only casting 1 spell this game. Now double Thorn of Amethyst and Chalice of the Void, so the cheapest spell he can actually play will be for 4 mana, and there's already the Wasteland waiting for Ferran Relat Goberna.
Yeah, I mean, really here we're seeing a testament to the power of Ancient Tomb. Ancient Tomb, one of those cards that when it first came out, people were a little bit wary of it. It does cost you life whenever you're tapping it for 2 mana, but we've seen an incredible amount of acceleration afforded to Ferran Relat Goberna here, just by being able to cast Chalice of the Void on his very first turn. Being on the play, very important to him, of course, and it means that he's been able to get things going. Love the little speech bubble here with that Phyrexian Revoker, just so that he can make sure that it makes it clear exactly what it is that he's not allowing to be used here.
And the funny thing is, Ferran was not even on the play in this game. He was on the draw. He just had the Ancient Tomb into Chalice. His opponent already had a Delver, but no Daze and no Force of Will for Francisco meant that he was basically out of the game right there. And now Hangerback Walker comes in as a 3/3, is already a 3/3. Good if it sacrifices it to Arcbound Ravager, create 3 Topters, grows a little bit the Arcbound Ravager. This is fully how this Steel Stumpy deck is supposed to work, where the only card that is really missing is the Steel Overseer. This would make it complete, but I don't think he will need it this game, as he might even have already enough damage. Look at that Inventor's Fair as well, and a little nice addition to the deck, which is able to tutor up anything you want. And we see the Scoop in response to the Volt Scourge, another card famous in Modern, but in Legacy we haven't seen it so far. But look at that, Volt Scourge out of the Steel Stumpy deck. What a great deck to start the day with.
Now, I kind of want to talk to you a little bit while they're sideboarding on this, Moraine, because we are going to stay with this game so we can get a little bit more detail on how this deck goes, about the fact that this deck, to me, it kind of appears to be like a halfway house between Modern Affinity and a vintage lock deck like Stacks.
Yeah, that certainly is where it is at. I think he's got the advantage that in Legacy people don't play cards like Stony Silence. People don't play cards like Kataki. They just don't expect a full artifact deck, and I think that's where the deck preys on. If people would start playing Stony Silences or Kataki in Legacy, I don't think this deck would ever be playable. But since no one is, he seems like to be having some success.
I mean, it's not as if there are no artifacts in the format, but this is not necessarily the format where boards get flooded with artifacts in quite the same way as either modern or vintage.
Yep.
And right now, it seems like Ferrerat Gaberna and his team able to work quite well off that. Worth noting, both these teams on 6-2. They're going to have a pretty decent day here on day 2 at Grand Prix Madrid if they're going to make any run at being in the top 4. With the number of teams in the mix, we think that it's going to be an X2-1 finish. So 6-2 right now. So over the course of the rounds today, picking up no more than a single draw. As soon as you're at 3 losses, unlikely to be able to make that top 4.
Yep. I think the X2, maybe X2-1 will make top 8, but X3 is not going to make it, I assume. Although there's only 45 teams, it's been a long time since we've had such a small day 2 at a Grand Prix. But I still think X3 won't make it.
Little fun fact for you here, Moraine. Of course, because there are 45 teams, that means that there's one team that's entered today with the Sunday morning bye. Guess which team that was?
Nope.
Simon Gertsen's team, fellow coverage member. Simon Gertsen, he'd sort of said, you know what? I'm going to be doing coverage for the year, but every time a team event comes up, I'm going to make an effort to play, and he's doing exactly that. Managed to get through with a pretty reasonable record yesterday, and of course, picking up that free win on the start of the day is certainly not something that Dr. Gertsen minds about at all. So just so you know what the overall matchup looks like in this round 9 as these guys are just finishing their shuffling, we have a couple of different blue-black decks in standard, a mid-range version, a control version. In the middle seats, we've got some kind of neat decks. Antonio Del Moral Leona, he's running it back with humans. We obviously know that he's had a large amount of success with humans, and many of the Spanish players have enjoyed playing humans, even at the Pro Tour level. Ramon Pereira Costa is playing Ad Nauseam. That a deck that it's really interestingly placed. It has occasions where it's absolutely just hated out of the metagame. It's just not a good choice. If people happen to have things to deal with, the likes of Storm, if they happen to have the right kind of disruption, then it can be a very rough old ride for Ad Nauseam. But with things like the Humans deck being a little bit more based around permanence, yes, Meddling Mage is a pain, yes, Kitesail Freeboater is a pain, but Ad Nauseam, we've seen a little bit more of it at this GP than maybe I'd seen at other recent modern events.
Yeah, I think we've seen 2 or 3 copies so far. Maybe more people are willing to take the risk. I don't necessarily think it's good against Jund, because the discard is quite a problem, although you do only need two cards, but if they can just grab these Ad Nauseams, you are pretty much in trouble. You really need that one. I'm a bit surprised, but yeah, it's just a deck people like to play. It's one of the real combo decks in the format. I mean, there's other combo decks, but this one is really about just 2 cards. There's not that many around in Modern at this time.
And then, of course, we have this matchup here, which is we've called it robots. You could quite easily call it sort of artifact lock, prison, that sort of thing. Halfway house stacks.
Steel Stompy.
Steel Stompy, yeah, why not? The Steel Overseer is a really interesting addition, and I like the fact of how well it plays with the likes of something like Hangerback Walker specifically, because those +1/+1 counters that you are throwing around, obviously great on the Hangerback Walker itself, but also very good on all of those Thopter tokens that it can create at some point.
Yep. I also like, cards like Sword of Fire and Ice. He's running a singleton. He's got a Lotus Petal and Mox Opal just to make sure that he comes out of the gates as quick as possible. I mean, with an Ancient Tomb, a Lotus Petal, and a Mox Opal, you can... well, you need another artifact to turn on the Mox Opal, but you can easily play a turn 1... Arcbound Ravager plus Chalice of the Void or something like that. Actually, you can like Lotus Petal, Mox Opal, Chalice of the Void for 0, and then play 2 Torn of Amethyst or something, if you get enough mana.
Yeah, obviously in Vintage, all of these plans are a little bit easier with the likes of Mishra's Workshop that taps for 3 mana.
Yeah.
But you know what? Ancient Tomb and City of Traitors do a reasonable job of mimicking the big workshop.
Of course, decks like these, they are so much better on the play. It's hard to imagine this deck being good if you lose all die rolls. You run into Daze, you run into more Force of Will. If they resolve a turn 1 Deathright Shaman, your Thorn of Amethyst is a lot worse. Cards like Chalice of the Void is a lot worse on the draw. But still, yeah, if you will be on the play at least one game every round, and these are the games you are preying on.
And Ferran, of course, did win on the draw in the first game. He's on the draw again here, having had that game win. And we're going to be off to the races, see whether or not Francisco Sanchez can bring things back. Antonio Del Moral Leon on the middle table with his Humans deck has picked up game 1 against Ramon Perello Costa. The Ad Nauseam deck getting taken down in game 1 by Humans. Meanwhile, perhaps unsurprisingly, the 2 blue-black decks lumbering away on our standard table, still looking to find their very first win here on Sunday morning in Madrid in Spain.
I love Sunday morning Magic. It just taking a look at these cool decks. I mean, the weekend is already filled with a lot of action, a lot of tension, and I think it's a good thing that we get to relax these first 2 rounds on Sunday, taking a look at more of the unique decks in the format. I'm sure we get some more unique decks lined up in a couple of minutes after this match.
We certainly have. I had a little sneaky peek of some of what those decks are, and I'm excited. Volcanic Island into Ponder here for turn 1 for Francisco Sanchez here, looking to set himself up for future terms. Having access to so many different ways of manipulating your deck and drawing cards on the first couple of turns, really one of the glues of the format. I mean, a lot of people talk about Force of Will as being very important, but there are so many different cantrips available to you in Legacy. In Vintage, various of these cards are restricted. In Modern, various of these cards are banned. But you know what? In Legacy, cast your Brainstorms, cast your Ponders, cast your Preordains, and just have a good time.
Yep. There we go. Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal. Are we going to see a very explosive draw? Take 2. Another interesting card which Ferran might have brought in is Ensnaring Bridge. He's got 4 copies of that in the sideboard. Definitely a card I think that is very good.
How about Hangerback Walker and Darkbound Ravager on the first turn?
I'm not convinced. This draw is weak against 2 or 3 removal spells like Lightning Bolt plus Fork Bolt, for example, or you just Daze on one of these and then Lightning Bolt on the Hangerback Walker. I'm not convinced this is the draw you prefer. I would much rather have something like a turn 1 Thorn of the Amethyst or turn 1 Chalice of the Void. Of course, Hangerback Walker is quite a good card against Delver of Secrets. You gotta give it that. Just make a couple of 1/1 flying tokens very good against Delver of Secrets.
And a Wasteland there on the 1 land from Francisco Sanchez. And that's the other thing that this deck can do quite handily. While it's taxing the amount that spells cost with the likes of Thorn of Amethyst, it has Wasteland on top to potentially stop too much in the way of spells getting cast. And now no lands on either side of the battlefield as it's dueling Wastelands. Francisco Sanchez, he has no lands. Fran Rolat Goberna in the same spot. He does have a Lotus Petal to work with and a Mishra's Factory here. Not quite Mishra's Workshop, but you know what? This one's allowed in the format, so he'll take it.
4 copies of Mishra's Factory in his deck. A great card, of course, against all of these, against blue-white Miracles, for example, to pressure the Planeswalkers. Just a land that adds some more pressure. Doesn't cost him anything since he's a colorless deck anyway. Doesn't mind, it only gives colorless mana. And now, finally, the Delver of Secrets will flip.
A little bit of trivia for you. Mishra's Factory, the most played card at Pro Tour 1. All told. In absolute terms, the most played card.
And might actually be also the most played card in Old School, right?
Possibly.
Also one of the best cards.
We now have the Winter Mishra's Factory. Looks like we're going through the different seasons for Ferran Rolat Goberna here with his original Antiquities Mishra's Factories. And we've got a crazy race in our hands. As the Hangerback Walker grows larger, it can potentially win back a little bit of time against this transformed insectile aberration that is on the side of the battlefield for Francisco Sanchez here.
The problem that Ferran has at this point is that his Hangerback Walker on itself will not be able to block the Delver of Secrets because it doesn't have flying, and he does not have that many ways to sacrifice it He's of course got 4 Arcbound Ravager, one of which has already died. But apart from that, I don't see anything in his deck to let it sacrifice. And also the problem is he cannot afford to grow it even more in order to race Francisco. Although this one might actually help turn on the Mishra's Factory next turn, get in for 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, he is winning the race at this point with the Mishra's Factory.
Steel Overseer, man. It's what it's all about. Caracas there, a land that the white mana that it can produce is not the important thing for Ferran here.
Get in for 7, put Francisco at 6. Now, Francisco needs a land and a bolt to win this game. Can he get there, and will we get to see a game number 3 here? That doesn't look like a man who would slam the land. Nope. He's actually got to hold back the Delver of Secrets to block the Hangerback Walker.
Are we going to end up having a chance to see how Humans plays against Ad Nauseam? I think we might, because this game does not seem to have very much left in it here for Francesco Sanchez here. Once he's relegated to blocking with that Insectile Aberration, it's really not too exciting a human insect.
Also, this deck runs 4 Wastelands, so once in a while you will just screw your opponent. I mean, these Delver deck lists, they run 18 lands, 19 lands from time to time, so it is quite easy to screw your opponents. And these 18 lands is always with 4 Wastelands, so there's only like 14 or 15 colored sources in these Delver deck lists, so not that surprised to see Francisco twice on 1 or 0 lands.
And there's the handshake. Ferrolat Gaberna picking up the first victory for his team. Of course, each team needing to get 2 full match wins in order to win the series and improve their record on the day. And he has a big old dig before he finds a red source. 5 cards down before he finds that volcanic island, shows the hand, scoops them up, and each of these players will now be looking across to their teammates in the hope that they can gradually power through and get up to the point where they get those 2 match wins.
And look at that decyborting Wretched Bomb, another card that was just great in formats like Modern and Standard, but it seems like Ferran has put them to good use in Legacy. What a great way to start out the day. Also, Sorcerer Spyglass, a card that is being played at this point in Standard and in Modern, but it seems like it's also playable in Legacy.
All right, so now we're going to get a chance to see Humans against Ad Nauseam, and we can already see a Kiteself Freebooter has taken Bontu's Last Reckoning. There's already a Thalia in play that means that casting all of those spells a little bit trickier for Ramon Perello Costa, though if he had been waiting on a Pentad Prism, he'd be able to play Sunburst for 3 with a Thalia in play. As things stand, though, what he has to worry about is Champion of the Parish, a couple of Noble Hierarchs, meaning that there's a reasonably good attacking force here for Antonio Del Moral Leon. Meanwhile, that Kitesail Freebooter, having eaten Bontu's Last Reckoning, means that the best way that Ramon Pereira Costa had of dealing with all those creatures, it's already been dealt with by one of those creatures.
Yep, the Kitesail Freebooter is just the most important card on this battlefield. I mean, imagine it not being there and Ramon still having that Bontu's Last Reckoning in hand, waiting for it to fire off for 4 mana. For example, next turn, just get rid of all of these Noble Hierarch, Champion of the Parish. That would just be insane. He could actually have played it this turn thanks to Pendant Prism. Does he have a second one? Ooh, look at that.
So none of these lands are going to get untapped next turn, which is a real cost. But he's dealt with the early assault, and he now has a second copy of Bontu's Last Reckoning sat in his hand, ready for when Antonio Del Moral Leon is able to rebuild.
I look at Bontu's Last Reckoning aspect of Damnation. It's like
I like that a lot.
Play it this turn, yeah, you gotta pay it again next turn. And now there's a second copy in his hand, and he's still at 14, so I think he's in good shape for this game. He did lose game 1, which I'm not too surprised, because I think Freebooter, Meddling Mage and Thalia in the same deck when you're trying to resolve a 5 mana instant are quite rough, but this game with Bontu's Last Reckoning, that's quite a good sideboard option he's got.
And Del Moral Leon here does not have a whole lot of land to work with, which makes life a little bit fiddly for him here. He's relegated to probably casting at most 2 spells in a turn. Cast an Ether Vial here, so that'll mean that he's going to be able to deploy more creatures fairly easily. 3 cards left in hand. Obviously, Ramon Pereira Costa was not going to have a whole lot going on that turn. He did go through his untapped step, but you know what? None of those lands were untapping, meaning that he essentially had nothing to do on his turn. Cavern of Souls here coming down. I'm sure that one will be naming human. And Uh-oh, here's another kite cell freebooter. Bontu, your last reckoning. It's a messy thing coming.
It's what Antonio needs. He needs to get rid of that Bontu, and then hope Ramon doesn't have the combo pieces at the ready.
If there's enough combo pieces, he might have to get rid of the combo.
Yeah, and then next turn it will be Ramon playing that Bontu's Reckoning, and then he won't be unable to untap, and then so he buys himself 2 turns if that would be the case. And it seems like it is the case actually. There's Ad Nauseam, Phyrexian Unlife, Spoils of the Vault, and Bontu's Last Reckoning. Problem is though, if he is not able to pick that Bontu's Last Reckoning, he cannot really overcommit. If he puts too many creatures on the battlefield, he knows there's a Bontu's Last Reckoning coming, and he knows he's in trouble.
And there's this awkward thing here of next turn, Ramon Pereira Costa has at least 6 mana. At least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At least 5 mana. 6 with the Simian Spirit Guide. That means that he can cast Ad Nauseam and still have 1 mana left. If he drew a land, then he could Spoils of the Vault for Angel's Grace, cast Ad Nauseam, and potentially win this game.
Unless the Angel's Grace is too deep, and then he loses on the spot.
True.
So I think he would prefer to play that Phyrexian Unlife first, and then play the Spoils of the Vault. That way he wouldn't lose, he would go down to 0, but still have the card he wants in his hand, but then he won't have enough mana to play the Ad Nauseam. This is a difficult kite sail freebooter. I don't think Antonio can afford to take the Bontu's Last Reckoning. I think he's got to gamble and hope that if he buys himself 2 turns by taking something different, that the Bontu's Last Reckoning will be too slow and he will be able to finish his opponent. But that will be hard at 14 life. This is a tough one.
I mean, I guess if you take the Ad Nauseam, then you're either forcing your opponent to cast Bontu's Last Reckoning to get it back, or to Spoil the Vault for a card that you only have 3 of left in your deck. This is definitely a fiddly decision. Let us know in the chat if you think you've got a great line on this one, because there are a lot of options. None of them great, but...
Yeah, I think I like this. It's the card... I mean, if he leaves Ramon with both Phyrexian Unlife and Spoils of the Vault, Ramon will just play the Phyrexian Unlife and then Spoils of the Vault for the Ad Nauseam, which he just lost. Now you take the Phyrexian Unlife, and Ramon will have to gamble with the Spoils of the Vault if he wants to use that one. So I like the pick here. Problem is that he's not putting up any pressure. I think that's the big problem in this particular situation. The best thing he could hope for is that he's holding a Mantis Rider, an attack for 4 next turn. I think that's his best chance of winning this game. Maybe with the likes of a Champion of the Parish end of turn.
I mean, start throwing around some Meddling Mages and things get interesting.
Yeah, that could also help, although I'm unsure if he would have played... Nah, I think if he would have had Meddling Mage, he would have still played the Freebooter, because the Freebooter gives him more information before playing the Meddling Mage. And you don't really want to name Bontu's Last Reckoning with Meddling Mage, because you know it's the last copy in Ramon's deck. Very few of these Ad Nauseam decks play more than 2 Bontu's Last Reckoning. So if you name Meddling Mage, naming Bontu's Last Reckoning, you might as well play the Freebooter and get rid of the Bontu's Last Reckoning. You would much rather have Meddling Mage in play naming Ad Nauseam.
So Ramon Pereira Costa thinking very carefully about how he wants to work his way through this turn. Meddling Mage definitely at some point can become a problem, and once the Ether Vial ticks up a little bit, it creates a bunch of weird situations where you can flash in the likes of Meddling Mage or similar.
Yeah, the best Meddling Mages are these on Search for Tomorrow or Ancestral Vision, because they make sure you lose a card. We're going to see Bontu's Last Reckoning. So now Antonio knows what he needs to do. He needs to kill Ramon in 2 turns. Next turn, Ramon won't untap, so he's probably safe of not dying at that point. So if he can put 5 damage on the board this turn, and then a second Mantis Rider, so that's 3, that's 9. And he's actually short even with double Mantis Rider. So he will need, I'm guessing, a Meddling Mage on Ad Nauseam.
I do wonder what win conditions Ramon Pereira Costa has after sideboarding. If he's relying entirely on Lightning Storm, then there's the potential to flash in Meddling Mage and stop Lightning Storm at the right moment.
Yeah, the problem is that Ramon will probably have sideboarded something like Echoing Truth. So if you let him draw his whole deck, Echoing Truth. Oh, look at that! This is 6, 12. He's short 2 damage. So if he draws another Mantis Rider or another Phantasmal Image, he actually has the kill next turn. So he's got 6 outs to kill his opponent next turn. Or Italia's Lieutenant also adds 2 damage to the board. Ramon draws a third land and can now play the Fire Action Unlife. That actually spoils that plan of killing his opponent on the spot next turn.
This is very close indeed.
He already had the Simian Spirit Guide as well, so didn't even need the extra land. So now Fire Action Unlife is gonna buy Ramon enough time. So Antonio is back to the plan of drawing Meddling Mage on Ad Nauseam.
I think that's a different copy of Phyrexian Unlife, you know, because that one's foil, and I don't believe the one that was taken with Kitesail Freebooter was. Something to watch out for if you're playing multiple copies of the same card. Ideally, if you kind of want them all to look the same, so that if your opponent has had the opportunity to look at your hand, they don't get any additional information. In this case, redundant copies of Phyrexian Unlife, not necessarily the biggest deal, but something to consider.
And one of the reasons why this human deck is so good, you can see there is the Horizon Canopy. It can play so few lands and still function quite well. It will never flood, it will rarely be screwed because of either Vile and Noble Hierarch, and having that extra land that lets you draw a card once you go to the late game is such a powerhouse. I think it's one of the reasons why the human deck is tier 1 in Modern. Antonio knows he's in trouble though. He knows there's the Ad Nauseam. How can he get out of this? I think he's holding another Phantasmal Image, so he actually had the kill, if not for the Phyrexian Unlife. Of course, with Phyrexian Unlife in play, the Ad Nauseam can draw just the whole deck. He will go down to minus whatever, and then he will be able to finish the game with Lightning Storm.
So, this the big turn from Ramon Pereira Costa. He needs to win this game in order to force things back to a third. Ferran Relac Goberna already having won one match to his right-hand side. Obviously lovely. Adria Ferrer Fernandez is also a game up against Tony Ramos Pascual. So, in some respects, Costa can kind of hope that his teammates are able to help him out here, but he'd much rather, I'm sure, win the match for himself.
Yep. And at the other side of the table, Antonio really needs to pick up this win. He knows Francisco already lost in pretty fast fashion, to be fair. And his other teammate, Tony, is down already a game, so he really needs to pick up this win. He can let this game go away, but he really needs to win that next one. And now we have it. Ad Nauseam, Phyrexian Unlife is in play. As we look, you lose life. This is very important. It does not say you take damage. It says you lose life. So you go down to minus 200. But with Phyrexian Unlife in play, you do not lose the game for being at minus 200. You only lose the game for having 10 infect, but you don't get an infect from Ad Nauseam, so you can draw your whole deck. Now he's still got Simian Spirit Guides in his deck. He's still got the Pentad Prism and the Gemstone Mine to generate some more mana, and he will be able to Lightning Storm his opponent, discarding a bunch of lands. And there we see the Echoing Truth. As you see, he does have that out against the Meddling Mage on Lightning Storm. Very important information for Antonio Del Moral. He knows that the Meddling Mage on Lightning Storm is not enough. There we have Lightning Storm for 3 mana. It deals 3 damage, but you can add charge counters by discarding land cards.
Yeah, in principle, there's a world where if your opponent has enough lands in hand, they might be able to start throwing it back at you. But when you've drawn your entire deck, that world essentially doesn't exist.
No.
And that's enough for Antonio Del Moral Leon. He was having a good old look through that deck because that information will be very relevant to him as he goes on to his Game 3. He was able, of course, to pick up his first game win before we moved across to see this match. Ferrolat Gaberna on the Artifact deck was able to pick up a relatively straightforward 2-0 win. And we're going to get a chance to see a little bit of standard here on our front table. This is, on one side of things, the kind of mid-range blue-black, on the other blue-black control. But when you look at these boards, the difference is kind of pretty immaterial. Both of them have got Arguel's Bloodfast. Both of them have got Liliana Death's Majesty. Yes, there's a Glint Sleeve Siphoner in play for Tony Ramos Pascual, but when we look at these boards, it's very, very close indeed. And figuring out where the advantage lies will, in many respects, just come down to who's got the more cards in hand, who's got the bigger board. Life totals get a bit messy when you've got the likes of Arguel's Bloodfast going on.
Yeah, Arguel's Bloodfast is just a powerhouse in Modern. I think it's actually better than Search for Ascanta. In the one-on-one matchup, I think Arguel's Bloodfast actually wins the fight, because you can draw extra cards, and the turn 2 Search for Ascanta, it will be only be able to scry and draw your extra cards starting from turn 6 or 7. There we have it. It's been a long time since a card like this has been good in Standard. I mean, the previous Standard format, it was pretty bad. It wasn't good enough against Teamer Energy. But right now, it's just the card you want to be cybering against all of these blue-black decks.
It's so funny to me that the sort of trajectory that these sorts of spells have gone through. When you look at a card like Greed, which is hauntingly similar to the front side of Arguel's Bloodfast, that was a card that saw a small amount of play, not loads. But then you had Necropotence, which was no mana involved, less life involved, and went absolutely crazy. It's like you adjust the numbers a little bit on these things, and they go from being either the best card in the entire format to utterly terrible. And right now, Arguel's Bloodfast, somewhere in the middle of that. The play design team have done a good job of trying to get that one exactly in the middle of where it needs to be. Right now, it is performing well for both these players, though. And we see Liliana Death's Majesty getting back. That is
Gonti.
Gonti, there we go. So each of these players dueling Gontis, stealing cards from each other's decks. Their decks are so similar in many regards that it's almost as if they're drawing a card from their own deck that they get to cast. And mana requirements, even though they do get made easier in this matchup, not really a big deal.
It's basically
anyway.
the impulse of Standard Gonti. Card that is also very important in these matchup is the Singleton Liliana Death's Majesty. Most of these decks, they run one copy, but it's such a powerhouse on 5 mana. You get to do so many things.
So this match is one that looks like it can run and run. So what I will say is we'll probably jump back to see the Ad Nauseam match once it's ready. But right now we will see whether or not Adria Ferrer Fernandez can actually just lock up this entire series by closing things out against Tony Ramos Pascual here. Goes for the big removal spell here. That meets Commit. Now, Commit, a very potent card. A way of countering things that is not actually counter magic. Just delaying them in some respects, putting them back in the deck. And then we have actually seen Memory get cast a little bit as well. Both sides of it potentially very powerful.
Yeah, the best way to use the Commit Memory card is to flashback it at end of turn with a Torrential Gearhulk. Giving your opponent 7 cards and untap first is not what you want to be doing, but if you are the one getting to untap first, that's actually quite powerful.
Yeah, kind of a strange interaction, that one, the way those two play together, but very potent when you're able to piece it together. Tony Ramos Pascual. It's so interesting that with Arguel's Bloodfast, you can go pretty low on life, and there's not too many ways in these matchups of pushing through damage.
And now Tony knows he needs to get rid of the Liliana's Death Majesty. He did save his own Liliana with the commit, so that was a good thing. Although the Vraska's Contempt is coming back this turn, I'm guessing with the Arguel's Bloodfast, Adria can draw an extra card, and it will also flip at the end of at his upkeep.
So these guys carefully position these. You know what? I've noticed that because if Adria wins this game, he will win the entire series. I'm kind of tempted to stay with this one a little bit. What do you think, Moraine?
Yeah, although it is looking like Tony Ramos Pascual is on the he's winning this game, but I still think it's worth staying here because this one is definitely gonna finish faster than the legacy game, than the modern game.
Alrighty, that's what we're doing. Let's see whether or not Adria can put a bow on this one for his team, advancing them to 7-2 in the next turn or two.
So now he goes down to 5. The Bloodfast will flip. There we have it. So it will flip into a land that can actually gain you some life, which is obviously very important once you're down to 5 life. It might seem like Adria is down in this game, but he's got a bunch of cards. He's holding so many cards, and now with the Temple of Ecclesot being able to gain him so much life back, I think he might be able to get back into this game.
So here's that Vraska's Contempt. We saw it the first time not doing too much against Liliana. The second time round, though, working absolutely as billed.
He did need something else. Just passing the turn, his opponent also still has the Argos Bloodfest, and now he's also going to lose his Temple to a Field of Ruin. Well played by Tony Ramis Pascual, getting rid of that utility land.
Field of Ruin, an absolute powerhouse. We've seen it being played quite a bit in Standard, quite a bit in Modern as well, actually. One of the better ways of dealing with problematic non-basic lands in the format.
Yeah, and the big advantage is that this deck is only 2 colors, so you can actually afford to run 3 or 4 copies of Field of Ruin. One of the reasons why Blue-Black is so good at this point is because your mana is so good. You can run either hub, and you will usually not even have to use that energy, which is very handy when you're running a card like Glintsleeve Siphoner. Being able to draw a card at the next upkeep is so much better than having to wait till you get to attack with Glintsleeve Siphoner.
And then we see that energy going up as another copy of Ether Hub comes down for Tony Ramis Pascual here. Big swings. There has to be something in that hand of Adria Ferreira Fernandez. He's tapping 6 mana. There it is, Torrential Gearhulk. The big question, what's he going to be able to... Well, I guess the first big question is he going to be able to resolve it?
Yeah, and Tony has to be careful. He's at 8. 1 attack from Torrential Gearhulk, and he's down to 3. So he really needs to have a removal. He cannot... I don't think he can risk to draw 2 cards. If he's not holding the removal just yet, drawing 2 cards is very, very dangerous. Drawing 1 card is fine. Going down to 6 is still fine, because the Torrential Gearhulk only attacks for 5. Oh,
well,
look at that. Did he... Oh.
There's the Essence Scatter.
If this was the draw 1 card to put my opponent on tilt, because I already have the Jace's Defeat, I loved it. I loved it. And if it was draw the Jace's Defeat, it was great as well.
Well, Adria Ferreira Fernandez, he's on 1 life now. Going to have to dig deep. He's got so many cards in hand, so much mana available. There has to be something that he can do here.
Bontu's Last Reckoning. He's looking at his graveyard.
This Standard format
Champion of Wits.
changed so much lately.
He's at 1 life. He needs something good. Gunti. He is facing 6 lethal attackers, because the Glintsleeve Siphoners have menace, so they count for 2. So he needs to draw double Fatal Push.
Well, it's all going to come down to this match, because Antonio Del Moral Leon able to win a very quick game against Ramon Pero Costa. So it's all down to Standard.
Yeah, and they are going to game number 3. Blue-Black Midrange Mirror for the win in round number 9.
Well, you know what? There's 11.5 minutes left on this round, and I mentioned at the top of the show there have been a lot of draws unintentionally over the course of this weekend thus far. Let's have a look at our standings and see how things shake out just as these players are doing their sideboarding. Normally, you don't see a whole lot of 22s at the top of the standings after day 1 of a GP, but that's because nobody finished with an undefeated record, a perfect record, should I say. The top 3 teams all undefeated, but they all picked up a draw at some point in the tournament. So you've got Clocker Koch and Linden, Lechado Rodriguez, Castro Garcia Gutierrez, and Vallejo Pascual, and Bonda, Peterson, and Evelson. That last one especially, Bonda, Peterson, and Evelson, They have a little bit of a history when it comes to doing well in team competitions, having picked up a number of titles and been working well late in the day. You can see Watsfeld Larsen and Nystrom there in 10th place, also with a draw under their belts thus far. And once we get past that, we can see in total there were 6 teams that finished at 6-1-1. The reason for that, Moraine, is that this is a format where you have the potential for the amount of thought going into some of these decisions. In constructed, where you've got 3 heads potentially up against one another in these final games, all thinking very hard, it can slow down the process. And that means that these draws are not people, taking a handshake and saying, yes, I've made it into day 2, thank you very much. This is teams eking out every edge they can to try and find a win, and sometimes that time that they're taking actually costing them.
Yeah, it's something you certainly should be aware of when you're playing in team. Is you can consult your teammates, but don't do it too much, because it will actually cost you some games and maybe a draw. And funny enough, there we have Gertsen, Laban, 25th place. Well, they did get the bye.
Yeah, they're at 21 points now, having got into day 2 with a couple of losses. But you know what? They're able to immediately get 3 points. Someone's going to be getting a bye each and every round, assuming there are no drops happening here on day 2 in Grand Prix Madrid. And actually, unusually, only one more page of results before we get back to our match, because... Oh, okay.
Is it right?
In total, there's only 45 teams that have made it into day 2.
Is Riley playing the GP?
There is someone with the surname Riley playing the GP, but no, Riley Knight, he is just finishing up his beauty sleep. He will be in, giving you more commentary later on today. All right, big game here. A little under 9 minutes for one of these 2 Blue Blacks to try and find a way of winning out. At 6-2, the dream's still alive. If these guys did take a draw, they would need to win out for the rest of the day to have any hope of making the top 4. But ideally, they want to get another win under their belts to make that life just a little bit easier. And it looks like we're seeing a mulligan here from Adria Ferrer-Fernandez after the highs of Ferran Relat Gaberna winning his match very straightforwardly. A quick 1-2 punch for him. Antonio Del Moraleon able to square things up, winning in 3, and now Tony Ramos Pascal looking to do the same for the team of Spaniards on the right-hand side of your screen here.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised. I think I saw 2 lands and 5 cards, including an Essence Scatter. So a bit surprised he was mulliganing that one, but maybe I just thought it was 2 lands and it was only 1. Now he definitely has 2 lands and also the Arguel's Bloodfast, so that seems like an easy keep to me. A turn 2 Arguel's Bloodfast and also the Essence Scatter on turn 3 or 4. It's actually 4 lands, which isn't that big of a problem when you have Arguel's Bloodfast. You want to make your land traps to be able to draw cards. This is the perfect start, although it seems like Tony Ramos Pascal also has the perfect start in the form of Glintsleeve Siphoner.
2 different starts, yet somehow both perfect, Moraine. I'm calling shenanigans. The Glintsleeve Siphoner coming down.
That's actually, on the draw, you don't want to go Arguel's Bloodfast. You would rather put pressure, I think. So I think in that way, it's the perfect draw for both of these players.
There's an Essence Scatter on a second Glintsleeve Siphoner. You can see both these players trying to play a little bit faster. Just 7 minutes and change left on this clock. And I have to wonder whether or not Tony Ramos Pascual is just in better shape just for having got the first creature on the board when you've got to find a way of winning a game in 7 minutes.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's a creature is not that important, but the fact that it also grabs him cards is quite important. Being able to attack in the meantime is obviously a plus. But the most important part is that he gets to draw some extra. I think he forgot 1. Comes into play 1, attack 1. Oh no, the second Glintsleeve Siphoner, of course, got countered by Essence Scatter, so that one did not generate energy.
I like the Walking Ballista there to take down Glintsleeve Siphoner on the other side of things. At least give a shot at continuing to get damage in with the first Glintsleeve Siphoner, keeping things a little bit ahead in the damage race. The damage race not necessarily always the biggest concern, but Liliana, Death's Majesty here.
Oh, and look at that. Tony Ramos Pascual, he played Walking Ballista as a 1-1 instead of a 2-2. So he kept up 2 mana. Adria knew there was something up. Was it Essence Scatter or was it Jace's Defeat? You know what beats these 2 cards? It's Liliana. Great play by Adria.
Yeah, like that a lot. We'll have to see whether or not Tony Ramos Pascal has something to try and get the balance shifted back a little bit in his favour here. Attacks again with Glinsley Siphoner, goes up to a couple of energy.
Yeah, not attacking the Liliana, so probably a Vraska's Contempt on his part. Yeah, but that means he stepped out. He stepped down. So if Adria has, for example, a Torrential Gearhulk or another big creature, a Scarab God.
Well, he's drawn a Torrential Gearhulk, but unfortunately did not have an untapped land to be able to cast it. Just goes with Vraska's Contempt of his own there to clear the board and starts getting hits in. Just a little over 5 minutes left on this clock. This is going to be a close one.
Yeah, this is a very interesting game. Both players not stumbling on mana, have drawn a couple of extra cards. Both doing meaningful things. Always good to have these kind of games on camera.
Gifted Aetherborn. I really like all of the numbers and abilities on this one. A 2/3 with Lifelink and Death Touch. Able to get a lot going on. The nickname of that one, Vampire Nightwalk, because unlike Vampire Nighthawk, does not have flying.
Yeah, and Adria should know about either Jace's Defeat or Essence Scatter. If he remembers the Walking Ballista play, he should know about that. Correctly not playing his Torrential Gearhulk into 2 open mana. Once again, well played by Adria.
So Adria Ferrer Fernandez here, desperately trying to dig to find what he needs to close this game out. We know he's already got a Torrential Gearhulk, which is a lovely place to be. Unfortunately, doesn't tussle too well with the Gifted Aetherborn. He would prefer, I would imagine, to be able to take that Gifted Aetherborn off the battlefield in some other way.
His draw was not that good. He drew a couple of lands and an Essence Scatter. So still no way to get rid of that Gifted Aetherborn. He's going to chump and then probably draw 2 cards. He's got to be careful, though. He knows his Torrential Gearhulk is not resolving. He's going to draw 1. Is he going to? I think he should draw a second card. The Commit Memory is a good one to get rid of the Gifted Aetherborn. I think drawing a second card is actually safe. He's first going to Commit Memory. Yeah, just making sure that the Gifted Aetherborn is gone before he goes down to 2 life. And now I think he should draw another card. He's not taking the gamble. I think it's... Yeah, 4 or 2 life is not that much big of a difference. No, it actually should have flipped, right?
Yeah, I think the Agal's Bloodfast should have transformed here. Just passes things back.
Yeah, and I like the play for Tony.
Yeah, there we see it on screen. It's a May transform, so it may be that he simply wants to be able to draw more cards.
Yeah. I like the play of Tony now using the Field of Ruin, not because I think the destroying a land is important, but his second card was the Gifted Aetherborn, and I don't think that's a good enough draw at this point. So he wants to shuffle his deck to make sure he does not draw the Gifted Aetherborn.
Tony Ramos Pascal, he's got 2.5 minutes to find 4 damage. I guess plus between 2 and 3 turns.
Yeah, let's not forget there's still the Argos Bloodfest, which can flip at any upkeep now for Adria. He didn't opt to flip it last time around, still not opting. Just having him that option of drawing the 1 extra card, keeping that around just in case he needs something more powerful. He's still got Vraska's Contempt and Torrential Gearhulk, so Tony cannot tap out, and he needs to put 2 creatures on the battlefield. I actually like the fact that he's not flipping his Argos Bloodfest, because he might be able to gain some life with his Vraska's Contempt and then be able to draw some more cards.
I mean, also with a Field of Ruin on the other side of the battlefield, he kind of wants to set up a situation where he can at least get 1 use out of it to gain some life before it is dealt with.
Although that plan is not going to work, because Adria also has a Field of Ruin, so if he wants his land to gain him some life, he can first destroy Tony Ramos Pascual's Field of Ruin and then let his Argos Bloodfest flip.
So Gonti gets dealt with.
Tony has a lot of cards in hand, but does not have the mana to fully use all of them.
Now, with a minute or so left on the clock, I'm going to call it and say that it's going to be tough for Adria Ferrer Fernandez to win this game.
Ooh, look at that. He can actually... Oh, this is great. Tony has stepped down by fatal pushing on the Glintsleeve Siphoner, and Adria is gonna respond with Torrential Gear Hulk, going for the... Oh, he could have actually Wheel of Fortune. He's only on 2 cards. I would have loved to see a memory here. Shuffling away all of the cards from Tony Rames Pascual because his hand is stacked. But instead he chooses to put the Fatal Push on top. I would have loved to see a memory here.
25 seconds remain. And you've got an entire team around Tony Rames Pascual, all providing their opinion.
Champion of Wits is going to draw Tony some cards. That's not powerful enough though. Keep in mind that the Argos Bloodfest is going to flip if Adria wants to. Being able to sacrifice that Gear Hulk to gain some more life.
Well, time has been reached here in our feature match area. That means that this will be turn 0. There's going to be 5 additional turns in total in order to each of these players to try and determine a winner. Adria Ferrer Fernandez is going to get 3 of them. Tony Rames Pascual, just the 2. Realistically, I think Adria is going to struggle to deal 23 damage in that amount of time. Though with a Torrential Gear Hulk at least on the battlefield, it may just about be possible.
He's getting 3 more attacks, so he needs to deal 8 every 8, 8, and 7. He's got 7 on the battlefield, so it might actually be possible, but he would need to draw some more gas. And let's not forget that Tony Rames Pascual still has so many cards in hand.
Yeah, I mean, at some point these teams are no longer playing to win, they're just playing to not lose. Impressive considering they started the game with around about 8 minutes, that they've managed to get through enough turns that Adria Ferrer Fernandez has 12 lands in play.
You now have Vraska's Contempt on the Glintsleeve Siphoner, correctly recognizing that getting rid of the Champion of Wits is not that big of a problem, even if the Champion of Wits would go to the graveyard. If Tony has to tap 7 next turn to animate that, I'm sure Adria would be fine with that, as it would just buy him so much more time. The Glintsleeve Siphoner is a different issue though, because that one does have menace, so you would need to put 2 blockers in front of it in order to be able to block it.
So Adria Ferrer Fernandez untaps, and you can see the giant dice of doom. We don't get a chance to see it too often in our feature match area, but that is the count of the extra turn. So this is turn 1 of 5.
Oh, the Argos Bloodfest actually not flipping because he gained 2 life from the Vraska's Contempt. Oh wow, that might have been a mistake, which could cost him the game here. I think he would have preferred drawing an extra card. Actually, he was stepped out, so he could not do that. And it's Argos Bloodfest does say at the beginning of your upkeep, so you cannot first put it on the stack and draw a card. If you're not at lower than 5 or lower than 6, you will not be able to flip it.
A big crowd around our feature match area, and indeed our screen now watching this game as it comes to its conclusion. One of the final matches in the room for this round 9 here at Grand Prix Madrid. And there is Gonti, Lord of Luxury.
Gonti is so good in this particular matchup. I mean, you always get the time to use the extra card. Well, of course, unless it's 4 lands. They're doing a little bit of a tricky play there, consulting, should I play this land or should I take this land or this land, just to make sure that Tony does not have a clue that there is a land underneath there. Little smart play by Adria and his team.
I really like the synergy behind every now and again you get to do it, using commit to put a card in the top 4, and then you cast Gonti so that you can really start playing those mind games, because both those players know what one of those cards will be.
Yeah, and a good thing to make sure your opponent doesn't know you're taking the second card at that point is before you look at the cards, you shuffle the 4 cards. Because if you just take them and you take 1 random card, your opponent can take keep track of what card you're taking. And if he keeps you take the second card, he will know what you took at that point.
Okay, so here comes Glimmer of Genius from Adria Ferrer Fernandez.
Glimmer of Genius, usually a one-off in the sideboard in these blue-black mid-range decks, just as a way to gain some more card advantage in the mirror match.
Turn 2 for the big Dice of Doom.
Yeah, now all of a sudden, Tony Rames Pascual is down to only a couple of cards in hand. He had to use a lot of them to get rid of the Glint Sleeve Siphoner. Champion of Wits didn't really gain him card advantage, it just made sure he was making the right land drops. But now he's down to 3 cards. I'm not sure if he can win, actually. He's got one more turn after this one. He needs to deal 5 damage. And it was so important that the Argos Bloodfest did not flip, because this time around Tony is going to play the Confiscation Coup. Imagine that Argos Bloodfest having flipped, it would have been able to sacrifice the Torrential Gearhulk, gaining him so much life, and making sure that Tony doesn't have it.
Nice plays there. Confiscation Coup, a card that's seen a fair amount of play in Standard. It was very good in the Temur Energy lists and still has its worth here now that we're moving on to blue-black control. And now that Argyle's Bloodfast is going to be transforming.
Too little, too late. That Torrential Gearhulk has already switched sides.
Turn 3 of 5 now, so this turn and one more for Adria Ferrer Fernandez. Looks like a lurking Chupacabra in his hand here.
Chupacabra. When this card was first spoiled, a lot of people said it was too good. But this card has not seen this much play. I mean, it's seen some play, mainly as a one-off in blue-black mid-range, but that's about it. This card is not too good for Standard, despite some people thinking it was.
I mean, there's still plenty of time.
Yeah.
He's just stretching his legs, getting a run around the edge of Standard. There's plenty of time for the Chupacabra to do good work.
I think the main reason why it's not too good is because of Torrential Gearhulk and Hazoret. Because these 2 cards, yeah, you can destroy them, but the one will come back and the other one is indestructible. So I think
the
that's...
Scarab God and Hazoret.
Yeah, the Scarab God and Hazoret, that's what I meant to say. So Scarab God will come back if you destroy it, and Hazoret you just cannot destroy. So that's, I'm guessing, one of the main reasons why the Chupacabra is not good enough. And also here a nice interaction. He sacrificed the first Gunty to gain a little bit of life, and now able to play the second Gunty, grabbing himself a Champion of the Wits or maybe an Essence Scatter. Yeah, he's going for the Essence Scatter.
And Tony Rames Pascual, he's got 1 turn left. Now got 8 damage to deal. This seems like a big uphill struggle. $23 life on one side, 8 on the other. I think in each case, might as well be 800.
Yeah, this game's over. It's just a draw. It's actually a very close game if it should have gone long. I think Tony Rames Pascual had the edge because he had the Champion of Wits, and if he can flashback that one, he could draw a couple of extra lands, but Adria still had a lot of draws where he could, for example, find his own Champion of Wits.
So confirmed that was a draw between these teams. We will be back with more Magic for you right after these messages. Hello and welcome back to Good Morning Magic. I'm Tim Willoughby, this is Moraine Laibert, and you know what? Our time walk match for the rest of this round is going to be more of a time sprint as we head back down to our feature match area to try and bring you a little bit more magic. You can see most of these lists looking fairly familiar. We're going to be taking a look at blue-white tokens in Standard though, another one of the decks that got picked out as being a little bit different to throw into our feature match area for Sunday morning, because we know that Sunday morning is the perfect time to bring you some slightly more interesting deck lists.
Yeah, I love Sunday morning.
We're taking it back. It's no longer just about sitting around, eating some breakfast, reading the paper. It's also about seeing some kind of cool decks, in this case in Standard. So on Julian Henry's side of things, blue-black mid-range, Lindsay Siphoner, nothing too unusual here. On the other side of things, though, Joao Murray, he's got something a little bit special going on in blue-white tokens. You've got the list in front of you there, Moraine. Can you take us through some of the highlights?
Yeah, the blue is a little bit misleading. It's basically mono-white tokens. In the main deck, he's got, I don't see a single blue card. Sacred Cat, Legion's Landing, Service Exhibition, Shram's Expertise, just trying to make tokens, as many tokens as possible, together with, of course, Anointed Procession, and then kill your opponent with, for example, a Pride of Conquerors. Pride of Conquerors, of course, a very good card if it gives your whole team +2/+2 and Vigilance. Works also very well with Shram's Expertise.
Well, Anointed Priest, if you're going to have a tokens deck, seems like a natural fit there. It comes down along with a Sacred Cat, so creatures on the board now for Joao Murray, having taken things a little bit slowly initially.
As a high hand in his white token deck, he's got 4 Angel of Invention as his 5 drops. The other cards are all cheaper, just trying to put as many tokens in play. Also 4 Queen's Commission, and as a removal spell, 3 Topter Arrest. So quite an interesting deck by Joao, and something we haven't seen before.
Champion of Wits here coming along from Julien Henry. So he is drawing 2 and discarding 2. Of course, when it pairs up with the likes of Angel Invention in Godfarer's Gift decks, the Champion of Wits potentially doing quite a bit more work. As things stand, though, a very solid 3-drop, no matter which way you slice it.
Funnily enough, Sacred Cat and Anointed Priest, enough to make sure the Glintsleeve Siphoner cannot attack. Something you don't see all that often, a Glintsleeve Siphoner that cannot attack in the early stages. But look at that. Signature card for Joao, Anointed Procession. We will see how powerful this deck is once it gets his 4 mana enchantment in play.
Now, both of these teams did make it into day 2 with 2 losses, so they're going to need a very good performance on Sunday if they're going to make it through to our final 4. And with unusual choices from at least Joao Murray on the team on the left of our screen, really intrigued to see how they pull through in this tournament. Nice to see a different take on Standard, though. Standard has been shaken up a little bit with the addition of Rivals of Ixalan, and of course with various cards getting the chop in the Standard format. It means that we've got a format that's as yet not fully explored, I would say.
No, certainly a lot of room to go. And now the Vraska's Contempt on the Anointed Priest are not only killing it, but more importantly also removing it, because putting it in the graveyard with Anointed Procession in play is not what you want to be doing. It would just come back in doubles, but by exiling it, a nice little way to get rid of it.
Yeah, I mean, when you've got a card called Anointed Procession and another card with the word Anoint in its title as well, you have to think there's some kind of a combo going on, and you'd be absolutely right in that summation. All right.
Let's make some tokens.
Shram's Expertise into Legion's Landing. That's a lot of tokens.
Yeah. 2 from the Legion's Landing. There we go. And 1, 2, 3, 4 from the Shram's Expertise. Unfortunately not...
6 from the Shram's
6,
Expertise.
yeah. 6 from the Shram's Expertise. And 2 from the Legion's Landing. Look at that.
This is how we drew it up.
This is how we do it.
It's Sunday morning and we feel all right. Glintsleeve Siphoner, never has it been harder to attack. So many creatures that will very happily jump in the way of that one.
Yeah, and imagine now a Pride of Conquerors. 8, 9, 3/3 attackers with vigilance. With Julien at 8, at 19, he would need 7 to kill. So Julien needs 3 blockers if that were the case. But another Schramm's expertise waiting in the hands of Joao Moraes. That anointed procession just too good for standard.
Shot, of course, here from Julien Henry, looking to just draw a few additional cards.
And imagine Legion's Landing flipping. That's 2 tokens a turn, 2 1/1 lifelinks. I don't think this blue-black mid-range deck can actually beat a flipped Legion's Landing with a procession in play.
Imagine if Anointed Priest was still around.
Yeah, gain a bunch of life, 8. Last turn. Let's make some more tokens.
Do it. Do it now.
Yeah, let's first attack. I've got enough anyway. Flip my Legion's Landing. Oh, look at that. Commit on the Anointed Procession.
I like that play. Anointed Procession. It's one of those cards that it's a bit frustrating, the cards that when you first initially cast them don't do anything at all, but we've already seen Anointed Procession show its worth here on this game.
Yeah, and the bad thing for Julien is his blockers are not very good against tokens, and it's something the blue-black mid-range deck actually has problems with. I mean, both Champions Wit and Glintsleeve Siphoner have 1 toughness, so they are very bad against token decks. He's actually going to wait on his second Schramm's expertise. Oh, yeah, he does have it, right? Yeah, I think
when you've got Anointed Procession imminent, obviously it needs to get through counter magic at this point, but at least in principle you have an imminent Anointed Possession. There's definitely a temptation to wait on Schramm's expertise.
Yeah, and he can still make a 1/1 vampire at end of turn with the land. Is also going to help him quite a bit. So playing the Schramm's expertise is basically only 2 tokens, because you're getting 1 anyway if you use the land. So I think it is indeed worth waiting for your Anointed Procession to be back.
And here's the Scarab God. The Scarab God, without too many creatures in the graveyard to eat, at least from Joao Moraes' side of things, which is kind of bonkers when you look at the number of creatures that are in play right now for Moraes.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 attackers. 2 get blocked, 7 get through. He gains 2 life. Oh, that's actually game. 7 get through, 14 damage, and he gains 2. So this is game for Joao.
This is exactly the damage. So yeah, we are running very low on the clock now in our main match. This is a time walk round, so we've got a big old swing here, a couple of blockers, and as you called it, Moraine, I believe this is exactly 12 damage going to be getting through after the lifelink of Gifted Etherborn. Julien Henry, he does a little bit of maths, but I'm pretty sure that this is exactly lethal. Scoops up his cards, and we're going to get a chance to, through the wonders of Time Warp Magic, we jump across and get to see. This is in fact the conclusion of the entire match. Joao Moraes was able to win his game against Julien Henry. Pierre Sommon, he won against Joao Andrade, a couple of different Joaos in these teams. And then it's Bernardo Torres against Thiago Rodriguez. We have Burn against Blue-White Control. Blue-White Control, of course, having got quite the boon in Jace the Mind Sculptor coming along to this modern format.
That's Boros Charm, Lightning Bolt. That's 4. 6 left. Skullcrack, 3 left. Lightning Bolt, 0 left. Game. That's how you do it with Burn.
Well, yeah, Burn, certainly a reasonable option in Modern. Just shooting down opponents left, right, and center. But we do get a chance to see more potentially of this blue-white tokens deck in the standard portion, because if you keep on winning, you keep on getting the feature match area. Not obviously every round, we're not doing any kind of winner stays on circumstance for our feature match area, but it does mean, you know, they're still potentially in the race to make the final 4. We'd only do a cut to a top 4 in these team competitions rather than a full top 8. We recognize that the rounds take a little bit longer, so we kind of plan a little bit around that to make things work out. And in terms of rounds running long, this round has been, well, we've got our money's worth, shall we say. We had our main match that went all the way into extra turns. We were able to bring you a little bit more thanks to Time Walk, and I've heard that there's still actually matches out on the floor going as well. One match still grinding on through. it's incredible the way things go in these team competitions, that we do end up seeing there's a little crowd you can see over Moraine's shoulder, all watching the one remaining match that's going on in our out on the floor. And that's all down to the fact that once you have a deciding game, essentially it becomes 6 brains trying to figure out exactly what they want to do, rather than just a simple one-on-one situation. And that's not necessarily always leading to, well, it may well lead to better decision making, but it will not lead to quicker decision making.
Never.
And we've seen lots of draws on day 1. By the looks of it, we might be seeing a few more draws on day 2 as well. And while we have figured out, we've roughly mathed it together and figured out that we think that X2 and 1 will make it into the final 4, you need to be a little bit careful about picking up those draws early, because it does mean that you've got less options later on. We will be back with more Magic for you and more Good Morning Magic soon enough. But first, these messages.